Poll question today: is Lotto Line the best way to go? We will put it to our next guest from Rinkwide, Canucks reporter Jeff Paterson. Jeff, how are you?
I'm good, guys. Excited to see the Canucks put themselves to the test against the Rangers and coming in feeling pretty good, I would imagine, after a nice performance the other night across the river in New Jersey.
How surprised were you to see Lotto Line reunited, and how lasting do you think it will be?
Not surprised. In fact, in hindsight, I'm a little surprised that it didn't happen earlier in the game in St. Louis the game before, because they were struggling for offense. The Lafferty, Pettersson, Mikheyev line, just that wasn't it. It wasn't happening, and the solution seemed there. And look, we've seen Rick Tocchet do this in games when they've been down, but to start a game from scratch and keep it intact, it's putting all your eggs in one offensive basket. But boy, Elias Pettersson looked like he had a little extra spark, getting an opportunity to play with the two other best offensive players, and they were dominant. I mean, just that first period, no Besser's goal was overturned, but it started early, and they didn't sulk once that goal came off the board. They just kept the hammer down on the night. I mean, the expected goals, 80% in the Canucks' favor when that line was out there. And for me, guys, it was sort of Lotto Line 2.0. It was a little more mature. It was a little more refined. It wasn't about being the Harlem Globetrotters on ice. I didn't feel like they were trying to put on a show necessarily. It was just about being in the right spot. It was about timing for Pettersson to get to the front of the net for the deflection to open the scoring. It was keeping plays alive to sustain the pressure in the offensive zone. And it got me thinking, because I don't know about you guys, but I look at my wife, and she's got friends that are out of town and around the country and other parts of the world, and she's in constant contact with them, texting and FaceTime, whatever. Like, I'm a guy, and I can go years between like visits with my buddies. But when we get back in the same room, you just pick up where you left off. It's like nothing ever changed. And that's kind of what I thought. I know that they're teammates and they've been around each other, but getting the opportunity to play together, it was like right back to 2019. Nothing had changed.
Why you never call me? How come you don't text me? Things guys don't say to each other.
Yeah.
Okay, so answer me the poll, Jeff. Is it the best way to go?
Short term, I'm totally down with it because I want to see more of it, quite frankly. But look, the Rangers are one of the best teams. The Canucks' second half of the schedule is littered with some of the better opponents in the National Hockey League. I think this will be a great test for this case and this theory. But my answer to the poll question would be no, because if we all agree that that is their top line, and it can be one of the best top lines in the National Hockey League, it was back in 2019, and it certainly showed form on Saturday. Beyond that, just on the depth chart alone, like that Teddy Blueger, Dakota Joshua, Connor Garland line, the way that they're playing and producing, I guess, is the second line now. And then this assembly of Suter with Kuzmenko and Mikheyev would be your third line. With all due respect to Teddy Blueger, who has outperformed expectations and has been terrific, he was signed essentially to be the fourth line center on this hockey club.
Yes.
He is not a 2C. He never has been, doesn't profile that way. And so right there, as good as that line has been for a month, there are still basically 3 months of the regular season plus the playoffs. I think it's a big ask for those guys to be considered a second line. And you just don't know what you're getting with Kuzmenko. Like, I thought he had a nice night the other night, 6 shots on goal. And, he was shooting with some purpose there. But Ilya Mikheyev's gone ice cold. Basically, he's gone into ghost mode. 1 goal in his last 11 games. So, it's hard to sort of feel like he fills out the role of a true top 6 guy right now. So I think by putting all your chips in the one, pushing your chips to the middle, it again just exposes weaknesses elsewhere. And ultimately, when you face other teams that can either neutralize that top line or shut down that top line, or if they just run into a hot goaltender, there will be some nights where Lotto Line, if they stay intact, won't have the magic. And then, what does that look like on the score sheet? And I guess to me, I think it again underscores the need to get back into the trade market here to try to find some sort of upgrade in your top 6.
That's the thing, though, Jeff. If you're going to stick with Lotto Line long term, now your need is second line center, which is a more difficult piece, I think we can all agree, than a winger to play with Pettersson, and a more costly piece.
That's a big reason why you don't do it. The other thing why you don't do that is now the line that's been ripping it up for you, the Blueger Garland line, do they get second best pairing matchups? They now face better probably opponents out on the ice, and are they going to be as effective as they were when they're facing the third pairing almost every single time out there on the ice? So it's not an ideal situation. We do get another question answered though. Who's going to play on the right side? I think we all thought it was going to be Ian Cole, but it is indeed going to be Ian Cole to start as the lefty on the right.
Yeah, we just thought he was going to play with Quinn Hughes, or at least we thought that was a possibility that he'd be on the right side with Quinn Hughes when we did all the, whiteboard, dartboard stuff in the preseason and tried to figure out who was going to go where. And of course, this is going to be the first game that they have played with their top six, in air quotes, together, because Zadorov didn't play the other night when Carson Soucy got back in there. And I thought Soucy acquitted himself reasonably well, having been out for 23 games. But yeah, I think it's important that they still have options here, that Cole is the first guy over to the right side, but that doesn't mean that ultimately that's where he's going to wind up, because we know that Carson Soucy's got some versatility there. And I think Zadorov does as well. So, Rick Tocchet said defense by committee at the outset of the season. I think he meant it a little differently now, but I still think the committee, the members of the committee maybe don't have their chairs at the table locked down. And so this could be a work in progress, but I'm excited to see what this top six looks like. And I did a little comparison shopping from game 40 a year ago and posted that on Twitter that, at the 40 game mark last year, the Canucks defense obviously had OEL. It still had Tyler Myers there. Ethan Bear was involved. Riley Stillman, remember Riley Stillman and Luke Shen. So, across the board, on paper and on the ice, this defense assembled now certainly looks like upgrades for the Vancouver Canucks. And it's pretty hard to argue with the results that they had. Now, again, we haven't seen this group entirely, but just defensively, the way that this team has played this year to get to the 40 game mark with just 11 outright losses.
These are a couple of good teams here. Do you think they they're not going to diverge completely from the way they played this season, but do you think they play coaches hockey? Like there's no risks taken. This is a playoff game effectively. Like, do they button everything down? Do the players stay disciplined in games? Like, they might've been a little bit teased in a more open style game versus the Devils. Not that they played a barn burning style. Like you mentioned, like it was a restrained Lotto Line performance, but what do you think these look like? Both of these teams, Islanders and Rangers, are both nice teams. This is a good test.
Yeah, I mean, the Islanders, and they'll see them as back-to-back and 3 and 4, so that's going to present some challenges, and you would assume Casey DeSmith goes in goal. But the Islanders are one of those teams that can be difficult to break down, and the Canucks have struggled there. Rangers can be tough to break down as well because, my goodness, look at the defense core that they've got with Jacob Trouba and Adam Fox and Andre Miller. And that game back on October 28th here in Vancouver was wildly entertaining, but so much of it was on the special teams. The Rangers scored 3 power play goals. 2 of them were 5-on-3. And then they scored the controversial goal in overtime where Pettersson thought he got tripped and they went up ice and they scored. So the Rangers didn't score a single goal 5-on-5 that night. 3 on the power play and 1 at 3-on-3 in overtime. You mentioned discipline. That's going to be key for me. The Rangers have the best power play in the National Hockey League, running up over 30%, and it's slightly better on home ice than it is on the road. So it's even higher than its overall average at MSG. And you just look at the star power, like Artemi Panarin. People aren't really talking about him, but like he is. I mean, obviously Nathan McKinnon and Kucherov have sort of separated themselves a little bit. McDavid is trying to narrow that gap, but Panarin is right there in the mix, leads that team in goals, assists, and points. Kreider leads their team in power play goals. Zibanejad, Trocheck, Fox running the point of the power. Like, I mean, it's just a machine. They can throw out like the highest of high-end talent. So if the Canucks run into penalty problems in any way, look out. And I think this sort of brings the discussion to, wouldn't it be nice to see Thatcher Demko just kind of park whatever's gone on with him the last 6 weeks or so. Now, he was good in St. Louis. They kind of squandered a decent performance from him there. But too many goals getting by, and even the other night in a 6-4 victory, there were goals in that game that you kind of left shaking your head that, it's not the absolute stinker, the one that just seeps through him and crosses the goal line, but I don't know. I feel like they should fit him for like some contacts or something. Maybe he's having trouble seeing the puck from distance, it feels like, but there were a bunch of similar goals there. Shesterkin at one end of the ice, Demko at the other. The Rangers had 48 shots the other night in Montreal. Like, Thatcher Demko could be really busy in this hockey game. Wouldn't it be something to see him rise to the challenge and play a lot more like early season Demko than he has here the last 6 weeks or so when he's been running with essentially a 900 save percentage?
Getting back on Lotto Line for a second, one of the offshoots is that, as Tocchet mentioned after the game in Jersey, he can live with some defensive deficiencies of Kuzmenko so long as the goals are there, which is not too dissimilar to what Bruce Boudreau said last year about Nils Höglander. How confident are we, guys, that Kuzmenko wasn't generating enough offense alongside Elias Pettersson. How confident would we be that Andrei Kuzmenko could maintain a level of offense that keeps him in the lineup and keeps him out of Tocchet's doghouse playing with Pia Suter and Ilya Mikheyev?
Well, I think the hope is that, and Blake talked about that de facto now second line playing tougher matchups. If Kuzmenko is now on the third line, you'd think maybe some favorable matchups. And look, Pia Suter is a really smart player. I think we've seen that an awful lot. He's got enough offense in his game that I think he can get the puck to Kuzmenko. I just like the fact that Kuzmenko was shooting the other night. The 6 shots on goal, but 8 attempts. And there was the one play in the second period where Noah Juulsen with a great headman pass, Kuzmenko came down the right side, leaned into a shot. And I think at other times this season, maybe he peels off and thinks that, all right, I didn't score, but did my part, got a shot, stuck with it, went and got the puck on the sideboards, a little shimmy shake to free up some space. And then they got a line change in, and Nils Amon was streaking off the bench to the back door, and a perfect feed from Kuzmenko. And so there was just a lot to like in the sequence. It didn't yield a goal ultimately, but I think in other circumstances it might. But yeah, I mean, that's absolutely going to bear, some monitoring here is what do those two look like? And again, at some point when Ilya Mikheyev feels like checking back into this whole thing, like I'm all for it, but I'm not sure what's going on. He hasn't scored since the game in Chicago, well before Christmas there. It was a nice deflection that day. But as I said, 1 goal in his last 11 hockey games. They need more, whether it's higher in the lineup or whether he's getting favorable matchups. He's got to use that speed, be far more assertive. And he's just gone way too cold here for the better part of a month now.
Great stuff, Jeff. Busy couple nights here for Rink Wide. We'll be listening, my friend. Thank you for this. We'll catch up later in the week.
Sounds good, guys. Thanks.
This great clip brought to you by, wait for it, Great Clips. It's going to be great.